That's why it's so hard, because they could be faking it also. That's the thing is, I fake it by saying I'm not it. Other people fake it by saying that they are it.
I just hope everyone listening figures out which extreme they're on. And the downside of my side is definitely you will be seen as more arrogant and more delusional, and you will definitely be criticized more publicly. And you'll be seen as a hypocrite if you do change your mind.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. Today, for episode number 1802, the identity problem. So Alan and I were talking before this episode, and we were thinking, what are we going to talk about? What do we want to talk about? What are we going through? What are clients going through? What are the lessons we're learning? Whatever. And then we started talking about identity. And I know we do a lot of episodes about identity, but Alan was talking about how it's really hard to achieve something if you do not identify as an achiever. And then the conversation was, well, for me at least, I think I'm different than Alan in the fact that I have to go do something before I identify as it. And Alan just identifies as it and then does the behaviors that somebody who identifies as it would do. So this
goes very hand in hand. Sorry,
you're good.
This goes very hand in hand with what we talked about yesterday regarding perception versus behavior.
Yes.
This is very similar. So I was on with a potential client yesterday. Shout out to this person if you're listening. And she was talking about how she's been struggling and how she was very vulnerable. I really appreciated this. She's struggling to believe in herself. She also said something that I thought was very powerful. I'll keep it anonymous. She said, I don't understand how people put themselves out there and get villainized and attacked by people and how that doesn't bother them. It would crush me. And I really did appreciate her sharing that. And I said it comes down to the core wound. And I think in some cases it probably does crush them. Maybe it's their ego protecting them. I don't know. But ultimately she said, I want to achieve this. I want to achieve this. I want to achieve this. I just don't, I'm not dreaming anymore. She said the last time I dreamed was a long time ago. I feel like I don't set goals. I'm so scared to set goals, particularly publicly, because I don't want to be a hypocrite, all this stuff. And we were getting to the core. I mean, we were really getting to the core of the problems. And I was thinking to myself, you need to just start really, really, really small and start building belief. Because I said to her, it's going to be really hard. You have these things you want to achieve in life. And I said, do you identify as an achiever? She said, no. I said, it's going to be really hard for you, I think, to achieve a lot in life without identifying as an achiever. And for anyone out there listening or watching this, do you identify as an achiever? I have my achievements on my wall behind me. I identify as an achiever. That's not necessarily Kevin's forte. Kevin wouldn't have his awards on the wall, partially because most people think you're a ding-dong. The other piece of it is you're not identifying as an achiever. And maybe all the awards that you've gotten are hidden somewhere. I'm kidding.
Throwing most of them away.
But threw most of them away. You did throw your bodybuilding trophies away.
Doesn't matter.
No, that means something.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It means something.
Doesn't matter. I know I won. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
It means something. It's not, it's really just a hunk of metal.
Yeah, it
Obviously,
meant
doesn't
something.
mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything anymore. Not to me.
Right.
Cool, you won a Grammy in 1978.
But here's the thing, right? Certifications and degrees. They how do you know when someone's credible? This is an interesting philosophical discussion. If I was certified in IFS, would you look at me differently? The answer is yes, and you should. Yeah. Does that mean everything? No. But it does mean something. I just was on with another client earlier, not a client, a potential client, and they talked about how they were DISC certified. The DISC assessment, many people, personality tests, their leadership. And he said, I have 300 missions flown. He was in the military leadership. I said, because listen, you want to do workshops on leadership, you have to people have to identify you as a leader. So what does a leader mean? What does a leader do? How do you do that? So this achiever, back to that. I said, it's going to be very hard for you to act like an achiever when you don't identify as an achiever.
See, I don't agree.
How do you act like something without identifying with it.
You do the behavior that's uncomfortable, but you know is necessary.
So you've been running. Are you a runner?
No, I'm not running. I don't run anymore. My legs are Jeff. No.
Were you a runner when you were running?
No.
So it's almost like you have to do something long enough to... When did you become a podcaster?
150 episodes in.
It took you 150 episodes?
To feel confident.
I was a podcaster even when I had a YouTube channel.
Well, I know, but that's why, again, you're delusional in one direction, I'm delusional in the other. That's all it is.
Well, which one is detrimental, right? They both are. We've talked about it, right? So
yours is more publicly detrimental. Mine is more privately detrimental because you were not a podcaster. You didn't have a podcast. And the reason I call that out is because it just didn't exist. It wasn't a podcast. It was a YouTube channel.
But it was going to be a podcast.
But it wasn't. I was going to be a...
But it became a podcast.
Technically, yes. But
that's exactly it.
But
you and I podcasted together, and we created a podcast.
Yeah,
and we co-host a podcast.
But all I'm saying is, I think yours is you're gonna face more public criticism,
right?
And I will face more behind the scenes personal criticism from myself.
That is very, very powerful.
That's the only reason I say the RSS feed. Not to, I don't, you know what, I want to shit on you. It's not that, but it's just that is your end of delusion. That's all. It's just And mine, I would never tell somebody I had a podcast until it was like somewhat successful, probably. Like, yeah, no, we have one. It's got 150 episodes, no biggie.
I remember one time I was talking to you, Kev, and I was talking about the marathon that I did. And you said something along the lines of, when you say things that you've already done, it doesn't sound arrogant.
Mm.
When you talk about things you're going to do, it sounds arrogant.
It can, I think, yeah.
That, to me, those are almost identical. Like, and I know this sounds really weird, and there'll be a lesson. Before I did the marathon, I already knew I was going to eventually do one. So it's the exact same thing for me. Mm. Like, after I did the marathon, the only difference is how hard it was. But there was no difference in whether or not I intended on doing it. Like, when I talked about doing a marathon, I used to say, I think I could run 25 miles without stopping. And I remember I had a friend who said, you're out of your mind. I said, I think I could. I'm talking slow, really slow. Right? And eventually it was a walk, so I couldn't do it. The half marathon was easy. The full marathon was actually ridiculously difficult. Doesn't matter. The point is that I always knew I was going to do it eventually, so it felt the same to me. Hmm. So before I did the triathlon, I didn't identify as a triathlete because I only did one triathlon, but I don't consider it bragging to say, hey, I'm going to do a triathlon. I don't think that's arrogant at all. I'm just going to do it.
I'm not saying it is.
Do you think it comes off that way?
If you never do it, yeah. What's the distance between when you say you're going to do it and when you do it? That's how
that
arrogant,
is so time perspective.
Yeah. I think that's how arrogant people will think you are.
Whoa.
I think. Again, I don't know. This is coming from emotionally driven Kev. I don't, you know how many people I've heard tell me they're going to be something and just didn't?
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about that.
Most people. I watched a little bit of it because I've fallen out of love with Joe Rogan, but he had Adam Sandler on, and I was like, "Ooh, I got to check this out." You want to talk about a guest? I got to check this out. And they were talking about how in high school Adam Sandler said he was going to be a comedian.
Yeah.
And then he went and did all the other stuff that he said he had, he needed to do in order to become a comedian. But how many of the people that told him they were going to be something ended up being what they said they were going to be? I don't know. The number's probably not big, though. I think there's always someone who does it, but it's a very small percentage of people that actually say they're going to do it and then do it.
Are you afraid to be this person, again, anonymously? They're so afraid to put themselves out there because if they don't do it, they're afraid to be seen as a failure or a hypocrite. And one of the core fears of emotionally driven people is being seen as a failure. Mm. But in a way, it almost guarantees you're not going to shoot shots. You're not going to shoot as many shots. I mean, you look at people, people who say, I'm going to be in the NFL one day. Well, the chances of you getting in the NFL are very low, but they're much higher if you say you're going to do it and actually be intentional about it.
As long as you're
intentional. No one's going to stumble upon the NFL.
Well, as long as
some people actually do. But.
As long as you're intentional, though. There's a big difference between saying something and intending on it. Those are two very different things. Extremely. It's very easy to say something in a moment.
I want to be a student here. Why do people say things they don't intend on? I've changed my mind. There have been many times where I've like said I'm going to do something. I'm like, you know what? No, I'm going to can that.
Yeah.
But I've never said something without the intention of doing it.
It's easy to say you're going to do something until you find out what is required of you to do it. And maybe it's just a lack of awareness. I said I was going to do a bodybuilding show intending on doing it, but it was way worse than I thought, and I didn't want to do it. The only reason I did it is because I said I would. I didn't.
Really?
It was way worse than I thought, for sure. Yeah. Again, it took pieces of me.
That's a good lesson right there.
For sure.
That's a good lesson because you put yourself out there by saying you're going to do it. So you kind of put yourself in that public scrutiny, which forced you to actually do it. But that was detrimental.
And completely understandable that this person doesn't want to put themselves out there and look like a failure publicly because it might also make you do things that aren't good for you. That bodybuilding show was not good for me. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, anything. And it was bad for me. It was detrimental to my health, for sure.
So when you were running, how long would it take for you to be running in order to identify as a runner?
Probably, I think there's always there's justifications and there's levels. Because if I was hanging out with somebody who also identified as a runner, there'd be levels. So it might be, I run, but I'm not like you. I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. going for 15-mile runs. I do a couple miles here and there. I think there would be a justification.
Everything's contextual in that sense?
I would say so.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting, and maybe this is why I have a different perspective than you. When I talk so I do a lot of podcast breakthrough sessions with podcasters. One of the things they say is, well, you're the expert, you're the professional, you have years and years and years of experience, boom, boom, boom. It's almost like they won't even say they're a podcaster. Because in their mind, it's way less than I am, but it's not. I have a lot of episodes, but you're still a podcaster. You have a podcast.
But you do the same thing.
Yeah. Remember when we
I don't know if I would.
Remember when we interviewed Julian Wynn?
Yeah.
I'm sure I said something along the lines of, I'm into martial arts, but not like you. Or, I'm a martial artist, but not like you, Julian. Because the truth of the matter is, I'm not. There are levels. There are contextual levels to everything.
Right. It doesn't mean you're not a fighter. It just means you aren't an Olympic fighter or whatever level he's at.
Depends in the room.
Just because you're not a black belt doesn't mean you don't do jiu-jitsu, right?
It depends on who you're talking to. For me.
If that's the case, then you're not an achiever compared to Elon Musk or whatever. And again, please don't associate me with anyone.
Yeah, right. Please don't associate any human being
other
than the two on this podcast right now. I don't
associate me with Emilia and Kevin.
I don't know.
That's it.
I don't know if it's that easy though, because I don't know. I just think it's like an energetic, emotional understanding that there are levels to everything.
Yeah, of course. Well, when are you a pilot? When you're in pilot school, are you a pilot? Even though, is it 100 miles or 100 trips? Is it?
You always are and you never are.
Exactly, yeah. Philosophically, but when do you identify as it? Okay. And again, this is the sort of meta
when
thinking.
You're the leader. When you're the leader, when you're in the cockpit and the co-pilot has less miles or less hours or less missions than you do, that's when you identify as it. For me.
But this is the conundrum, because you're never going to be the pilot unless you first identify in advance, I'm eventually going to be a pilot.
I wonder if wanting to be it is enough. I don't know.
When you, so there's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I recommend it to all my clients. I just recommended it actually yesterday. Shout out to you, Andrew. What's up, man? He's like, what book should I do next? He did the Compound Effect. He said Atomic Habits or High Performance Habits. I was like, Atomic Habits. Both of them are good, though. Both of them are good. Okay. In that book, he talks about the 3 circles. The center is identity. Then after that, it's the process. And then after that, it's results. If you want a certain result, you first have to embody a new identity. Or you have to start doing a behavior that's going to give you that identity. And he says this in the book. This is my favorite quote. One of my favorite quotes in the book. every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. AKA, every action you take is a vote for the type of identity you want to hold. We're going to read a book. I'm really hoping that this book wins the next vote for book club. And seriously, anyone listening, please vote for this book. It's Identity Shift by our friend Anthony Trucks. Even that right there, I said my friend.
Yep.
And I know he would say the same, honestly. But see how he shifts his identity really quickly? It's almost like if you wanted to be my business partner, you would have to decide that in your imagination in advance and then go make that happen. There's something here. I don't know what that means. But if you don't, I said this to Kev earlier and I meant it. Brother, the amount we're going to achieve together is going to be harder if you don't identify as an achiever.
It already is harder. It already is.
Well, then what's the downside of you not identifying as an achiever? Why don't we just have you identify as an achiever and then do achiever stuff?
Because then I feel like I'm faking it till I make it. It's not how it works.
But even if you align with it,
I've been aligned with it for the last 7 years.
And you still don't identify as an achiever?
I feel like I don't go through life thinking I'm my chair. I don't go through life thinking I'm an achiever. It's not a conscious thought.
But you're a bodybuilder.
Because I've been bodybuilding.
But you've been achieving too. I mean, you've achieved more than most.
I think it's different. I don't know. It probably just takes longer. Like I need X amount of results before I identify as something. That's probably
what would need to happen for you to achieve to identify as an achiever. The irony is you might not achieve it until after you identify as it. Maybe. I don't know.
I don't think that's the way it works for me. I just started telling people I was the chief sales officer of the business. Just now. Like,
how long have you been doing sales?
7 years. Not really, probably 5.
That's a hell of a turnover rate.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
it takes Kevin 7 years
either
to identify.
Maybe you're on one extreme and I'm on the other extreme, and maybe I'm further on the extreme than I realized. I don't know. I'm really good at just doing the behavior until I believe in it. I'm not 150 podcast episodes. It took me a long time before I ever felt comfortable as a podcaster.
Let's talk about the pros and cons of each. The con of mine is you're definitely going to be seen as delusional.
Yeah.
You're going to be seen as arrogant. And you might end up delusional and arrogant if you don't make sure you align with the identity. Like, you have to align with the identity. You can't just say, I'm a business owner and not have a business.
Yeah.
You have to actually align with it. You have to make sure your behavior is tethered to your perception of self, the story you tell yourself about yourself, which is identity. So I think humility and honesty with self is critical, self-awareness, because otherwise you can I remember I transformed the label of alcoholic for bodybuilder. I stopped drinking alcohol almost fully. And I started doing all the bodybuilding. I tracked my macros and I went to the gym. I mean, when do you cross the chasm of bodybuilder? Do you have to have done a bodybuilding show to be a bodybuilder? No. It's this weird arbitrary thing that we all do for ourselves. And I just hope everyone listening figures out which extreme they're on. And the downside of my side is definitely you will be seen as more arrogant and more delusional, and you will definitely be criticized more publicly. And you'll be seen as a hypocrite if you do change your mind. The downside of Kev's side is, it's going to take longer for you to actually be intentional with the things. Like, you identified as a baseball player and you identified as an all-star baseball player, but you didn't decide in advance to be an all-star baseball player. And I wish I could put you in a time machine and coach you and be like, Kev, instead this time, I want you to decide in advance to be an all-star baseball player. Can you imagine how much better you would have been if you actually tried to do that?
I didn't want to play baseball in the beginning.
Then why?
My mom made me.
Well, then fair. I didn't
want to be a speaker either. I don't want to be a speaker. I'm going to start this to be a speaker.
Now?
Yeah, I love speaking now. I think I'm world class.
I don't get it.
I think I'm world class. I had a podcast breakthrough session today where we were talking about speaking, and I was like, whoa, I know way more about speaking than I thought. This is awesome.
That's awesome. Do you identify as a speaker now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
But it's not 0 or 10. There's a bunch of slots in between.
NLU listener, what is happening? I just wanted to jump in here and let you know if you want to get to the next level faster, we have a free virtual monthly meetup at the first Thursday of every month, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can connect with like-minded people and become a bigger part of this amazing global community. The link to register will be in the show notes. You remember when, I forget where we were, but someone things that was said. Maybe it was an event. I think this event was hot garbage, to be completely honest. But there was one thing that was said that was really powerful, which was the people. I don't know which event this was. I don't think it was Florida. The people they need to self-identify. The people you want to help need to self-identify. So, for example, if I said, "Hey, I'm looking to help achievers start, grow, and scale their business online." If you don't identify as an achiever, you're not going to think I'm talking to you.
100%.
How detrimental is that? Because how many people want to start, grow, and monetize a business eventually that don't identify as achievers?
A lot.
That's really no wonder why I suck at this.
What's the difference between helping achievers and helping someone else?
The people who identify as achievers typically are willing to grind more. Typically.
Wouldn't you?
Not always.
Would you also argue that some of again, not villainizing anybody, some of the
Definitely.
people
100%.
are also over and arrogant?
I would say they lack. I would say their biggest weakness is almost always humility.
That's why it's so hard, because they could be faking it also.
Yeah, more of them are than I thought. That's for sure.
That's the thing is, I fake it by saying I'm not it. Other people fake it by saying that they are it.
But it's such an arbitrary line in the sand.
I know.
We're podcasters.
It's an internal thing.
Because think about it. If I identify as an achiever, that basically becomes more and more true the more I achieve, right?
Yeah.
I was identifying as an achiever when I was 14, deciding to get straight A's in high school. It just became more and more true over time. I think where it becomes maybe arrogant is when you continue identifying as it even though you're not it. Like when you went to the carnival and thought you were still awesome at baseball, it's like an old identity that needed to be shed because you're obviously not what you once were.
Definitely not.
What are the implications to your side of it? And how do we...
Just checking the time.
Yeah, how do we help people...
We're out here jeffing today. Man.
Is this a big one for you? This is like a trigger thing for you?
No. We're not going to be able to get 2 episodes done. We're only going to get 1 done, and we're doing 14 episodes this week, so I'm freaking out because I'm supposed to be traveling and all this happy jazz. No. For me, it's... I don't know. I feel like more people have probably lived my experience than yours.
Definitely.
And I don't know if I have a good answer. I just do the uncomfortable thing long enough until I eventually get somewhat comfortable, and then eventually it's like, oh yeah, I am good at this, or I am this now.
Based on external validation?
Probably.
So
yeah.
It's
other
almost
people
like identify you.
If I was to be in a room with 100 people, I have to be able to help at least 50 people with the thing. 51 people. Well, 50 people. And then it's like, I am that now. Because, again, I don't know what's worse. Identifying as something and getting the opportunity and then failing miserably and then saying, well, maybe I'm not that after all. Or just waiting longer. I don't know.
Last thing. You and I went to an event. We've told the story before. I went in saying I'm a speaker, having given speeches. Right. And I compared myself to Brendan Burchard at the event. And I left with all the humble pie, feeling terrible about myself because he was a decade ahead of me at least. Thousands and thousands and thousands of speeches ahead of me. And I realized how far behind I was. You went into that event thinking you were going to suck, you weren't even going to belong in the audience. And then you ended up helping a ton of people in the audience, coming back on cloud 9. And that was the one time where we think you got arrogant.
Yeah.
What if that was the one time you actually felt good about Kev?
I mean, I did, but I went over for sure. I definitely went over.
Yeah, fair.
For sure.
Fair.
But it was proof. That was a line in the sand of, oh, maybe this is something. Maybe this is something. It's I don't know. For me, it depends. Compared to you, I am a martial artist. Compared to Julian, I am a hobbyist at best. At best.
Okay, now do both simultaneously. What are you?
It depends on who I'm around.
No. Like globally.
Yeah, martial artist globally.
Cool.
Globally.
That's what. Okay, maybe we found the answer. Maybe that's the answer. It's you have the floor, you have the ceiling.
I'm a podcaster. You put me in a room you give me 100 people. Odds of there being somebody in the room that has more podcast episodes, and it is so low. Like, what are the chances?
Yeah.
Unless it's you.
No, it's true. But I wonder what about when you were at 150?
No. Less. Yeah, less.
So you just become it more and more and more and more. You align with it more and more and more.
I think that's
why
why it's hard.
The only downside is how do you intentionally pour into something you don't identify as? That's interesting. I don't know if I've ever done that.
Practice the behaviors that, people say, act as if you are the type of person, whatever the freaking quote is. I don't know what it is. Act in alignment.
Do you identify as a public figure?
No.
You are, though. Okay, what's the definition? This is all definition based. What is the definition of a public figure?
I don't know. Other than the time where I chose public figure on Instagram, I don't know if I've ever once thought about it.
It's very important for you to, again, playing devil's advocate here. If we don't identify as public figures, we won't behave accordingly. Like, I'm purposely planning in advance. Emilia and we purposely don't give out our address, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do that for, I don't know, safety more than anything.
But
and
there are implications to being...
It's different.
Yeah, there are implications to being a public figure that you need to think of in advance. Okay, when will you be a public figure?
When more of the public figures to care about me. I would say, probably.
It was some arbitrary line, like someone recognizes you on the street?
There's a reason there's A-list, B-list, C-list, D-list actors and actresses. There's a reason.
But there's so many actors that are on the A-list that decided in advance.
I know. But all I'm saying is, at a party, the C-list might say, yeah, I'm an actor, but I'm not like Tom Cruise over there. I'm not like Leo. I'm doing it. I'm trying.
Yeah.
I think that's out of self-preservation. So because on your end, if somebody was to say to you, like, well, what have you been in? Well, I've been in a couple small things, but I'm working really hard to make my way to the proverbial top. You're losing all credibility right there. It's like, well, that's cool. I mean, good for you. I'm going to go hang out with Tom.
This goes back to core wounds. I don't think I would care.
That's probably what it is.
That wouldn't bother me at all. Yeah. Yeah, whereas you would.
I need to prove to myself that I can actually stay. I don't want to identify something that I can't live as. Pass.
This is similar to the thing we talked about last episode where the guy comes and says, what's your height and what's your weight? And then they get found out.
Yeah, I don't want to get found out.
Is that what it feels like?
No, yeah. Yeah, I don't want to get found out.
Oh.
I don't want to get found out. Because what that's going to do to me behind the scenes is way worse than anything somebody's going to say to me. I have to live with whatever that is forever.
Makes sense. This person I was on the session with, do you wonder how people get so villainized and they're still okay?
I wonder it less, but now it's just not their core wound. So it's not that big of a deal. I mean, again, obviously it still sucks, but not to the degree that it would for me.
Not to the same extent at all. Yeah.
Right.
Last thing, I said that 6 times. Emilia, I figured out why Conscious Couples podcasts is so hard for me. It's unlovable. It's connected to love. I mean, this is too, but not nearly to the same extent, right? So we did a Relationship Talks virtual event on Thursday. And Emilia is coming up and speaking, and she does a really good job, but she's got way less reps than you and I. So if you and I were to give an event and she and I were to give an event, you and I would do a better job in the performance. I think the value of the content would probably be better on the other one, quite frankly. Less pictures of Kev bodybuilding. I'm kidding. But ultimately, you're a better speaker. You are. You can have conversational agility. I can interrupt you and you're good. It's not, you're more concise. You're more effective at transcoding. You can get the value delivered better. You're just a better orator. I was insecure as hell yesterday because I'm so far ahead, not behind. I realized that I'm insecure, and she's like, Alan, you're good. I want you to be ahead. Normally that hurts my relationships. Being better than is usually detrimental to my relationships.
Yeah, it's really good for mine. I love it. I'm a huge fan
of being ahead.
Yeah, for sure.
Hate
I'm
it.
so used to being
Absolutely
behind.
hate it.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah.
It makes total sense. I love talking to people.
She said, Alan,
who are
I'm not
new.
insecure about being behind. I like it better. I said, that makes sense. So anyways, it's way harder to podcast with her and to do events with her because it's connected to my heart more.
Yeah.
It's the love of my life here. So if I hurt her on accident,
yeah,
it's different.
Well, in
it's
fairness,
so
I think she's probably way harder to hurt than I am.
Yeah.
You know,
but
you've made it this far with me and you haven't broken me yet. I think you're going to be fine. But again, it's logically, yes. Emotionally, it doesn't matter what you say, Kev. It doesn't matter. It's not, you don't get it. Understandable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting topic because for me, I don't know if I would give that advice to someone. Not that I'm not saying it's wrong. It's almost like just believe in yourself more. Just identify as the thing before you become it. No, I don't think I will. I don't think that's how it works for me. I think I have to go do it and prove to myself that I could become the person who is capable of becoming that eventually.
Yeah. And then you build the belief in the real world so that you don't get crushed when you lose credibility in a public
Do you
thing.
think
if the core fear is being seen as a failure, it would make sense that you would purposely not put yourself on any pedestal.
It's almost like let me go bodybuild for 15 years behind the scenes and then eventually I'll come out and then I'll let people see me then. When I'm enough, quote unquote. You think James Clear, how much self-belief does James Clear have, do you think?
Yeah.
Probably got to be pretty high.
Yeah, it's very high.
So even that, because people ask me on podcasts, why didn't you ever stop? They always ask that. And I said, well, the longer we do it, the easier it gets. In terms of, I'm not just going to wake up one day after 1,500 episodes and say, like, I think that was good. That was good. That was a good amount. Because it's easier to do more episodes now than it used to be. Other parts of life are more challenging and more pressure and all that. But I said it eventually became, this is how I say it. This is literally how I say it. It eventually became part of my identity. I'm a podcaster. I'm a consistent human being who never misses. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. It is part of our identity as a brand that 7 episodes, an episode every single day in your pocket from anywhere on the planet completely free. That's a piece of our identity as a brand. But that's also a piece of Alan and I's identity. But you probably had that long before I did.
Yeah, definitely.
You just maybe assumed I did too.
A brand is an identity of a company.
Right.
That's ultimately what that is.
Right.
And so this is good. So which end are you on for the listeners? Which end are you on and what are the implications of that? And that's pretty much it. I don't want to tell anyone to do anything they don't want to do, but if you do have the core wound Kevin has of like you don't want to put yourself on a pedestal because if you ever got knocked off that publicly, it would crush you. Definitely don't overly identify as something beforehand because then when you do it, it really is going to crush you potentially.
Potentially. That's where do you have imposter? Isn't that what imposter syndrome is? Isn't the imposter syndrome the fear of somebody questioning something you identify as much as you identify as it as much as?
I think everything is different for
Dens.
You and I had this with a client yesterday. I said, I think our version, and this is someone who identifies on my end, our version of imposter syndrome is I know that I don't know. Meaning, I know so much. I know there's so much more to learn. Like in business, I know that I know more than 99.9% of all humans about business. I'm certain of that. But I know so much that I know how much I don't know. So that, to me, is imposter syndrome. I don't have any of the someone's going to find me out thing. I mean, there's none of that.
It's so interesting. What if you did get found out?
There's nothing to find out.
There's got to be something. So maybe that's all it is. when I cross a certain chasm in podcasting, I don't think there's anything anybody's going to find out.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, maybe that's.
I think
what
it's
it is.
certainty. You just have more certainty in what you know and your. Again, it's not that simple, but in your skill sets and.
But I've been rocked before and wrong about that. I just happened to. One of my mentors was the CEO of a $1 billion robotics company, so. I mean, he would have found me out for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
So I've been in those rooms. I just know where I stand in this. But there have been times when I didn't, just like the Brendan Burchard thing. Well, that, in a way, was me being found out, right? So,
well, that affected you at the identity level.
Yeah, it did.
For me, it did too, but in the other way. Like, I'm the freaking man. All the work has been paying off. That's all it was. It was just a representation that all the work had been paying off, and now I could identify as whatever that meant.
Yeah, it almost retethered us both to reality, closer to the truth. But then we overswung. Yeah. I went under, you went over. This is an awesome episode, yeah.
Very interesting one, for sure. If it sounded like Alan and I were arguing at all, we weren't. Or we were, I don't know. Alan likes to call it something. I like to call it, I think it's usually I'm trying to figure out what my truth is, and I don't know it yet.
Healthy discord.
Healthy discord, he says. I don't think so. I think it was conversation amongst friends.
But again, that's all just a label.
Yeah.
With a different definition.
That's the other thing, too. It is. It's all, how do you label yourself? Because there's some people out there that would say it's dangerous to label yourself. I think in some cases it probably is. And on the other end, sometimes it's dangerous not to label yourself, maybe. Do we know anything? I don't know. I don't freaking know.
I think we know a lot, but we also know we know not a lot.
Yeah, it's hard.
That's for sure.
All right. If you want to know a lot, or maybe learn that you don't know anything about anything, or a lot about something, I don't know. Your experience is going to be personal for sure. Make sure you are subscribed so you can hear us blunder through deep conversations 7 days a week, and you never miss an opportunity to get to the next level. And Alan, talk about your things and stuff and things.
Stuff and things. My favorite work in the entire world, I had someone who I've been coaching now for basically 2 months. She said, I really appreciate this. This has been awesome. I've been getting a lot of love lately from my clients, so I really appreciate it. I also got an audio yesterday. So it's my favorite work in the world, helping other people be more successful, achieve your goals and dreams. The reason why this whole episode came up is because I've been starting to really ask my clients, do you identify as an achiever? Because ultimately my job is to help you achieve your goals first, be fulfilled second. So if you want help setting up the train tracks, staying on the train tracks, and improving the train tracks toward your goals and dreams, I adore it. Please reach out.
As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Please reach out.